We're officially live streaming.
Okay.
And I am now going to go and hang on. Hello, everybody who's here already. Hang with us while we pipe this to a couple other Facebook pages. All right. Let's see. Where's two people watching?
Ooh.
I'm gonna do one more. Hello. And you guys are welcome. Anybody, I mean, if you have a Divergence Neuro page, you can go to HeartMind. You can share it too, I think.
Right on.
Alex is on it.
Copy streaming link. Is that what you do?
Yeah, do you want me to give it to you?
Well, there's a thing on here. I'm not sure because I'll put it on neuro meditation if I know how.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, if you wanna send it to us, Holly, that would be easiest probably, right?
Yeah, copy
I
streaming
just put
link.
it in the chat.
Okay.
So you should be able to copy it from the chat.
That's great. Thanks.
And then, yeah, here's the title and description. I'm gonna grab that. And Randy is here. Hello, Randy. And Saeed from Holland. Hello. Welcome. All right. And hang on just a sec. We're almost ready here. Get everything set up. Okay. Let me know when you guys are ready.
I'm ready.
Ready to go.
Ready? All right, thumbs up.
Yep.
Ready.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to HeartMind Happy Hour. I am your host, Holly Copeland, and co-founder of HeartMind Alchemy and HeartMind Alchemy Lab. And I am super excited today for an episode entitled The Future of NeuroHealth is Here. And we have three very special people from a company called Divergence Neuro, and we're going to get into that. We have Alex Nee, CEO of Divergence Neuro. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much, Holly.
It's really a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Thanks. And we have Dr. Jeff Tarrant with Neuromeditation Institute and author of the book Meditation Interventions to Rewire the Brain. He's a licensed psychologist and neurofeedback specialist and a science advisor for Divergence Neuro. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, really nice to be here. So happy to have you. And then last but definitely not least, we have Heather Hargraves. Hey, Heather.
Hi.
Is a trauma therapist and researcher and a passionate advocate for neuro and biofeedback technologies to support clinical practice. And she's just been a real leader in this area. And I've learned so much working with her and have interviewed her earlier, as I have Jeff. And I'm just really excited to have you here, Heather, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here with the whole team.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this product, Divergence Neuro, that is, from my kind of what I've seen of it, I'm really excited about it as a coach to be able to see a product that can enable me to work with clients and with a variety of different EEG neurofeedback headsets and well, we'll get into it, but there's just nothing like this on the market. And I just think it's going to be a really hugely useful tool to integrating neurofeedback in a new way into this arena of helping people with what we call neurohealth. And so, yeah, really, really excited. And this product is actually the brainchild of Heather Hargraves. She brought this together. And so Heather, I'd like you to start with you and to just tell us how Divergence Neuro came to be.
So it's been a long, meandering, weaving path, but essentially when I came out of grad school, I was working with neurofeedback. I really liked it, and I started working with it clinically. And between the time that I finished grad school and started clinical practice, I had found the Neuromeditation Institute, and I found Jeff, and I learned that the neuromeditations actually really overlapped with what I was doing in my graduate work and undergraduate work. So we were looking at different meditations and how they align with different mental health conditions. And that's exactly what Jeff had been doing. And then my graduate work was looking at like a psychedelic informed neurofeedback. So I went and I learned neuromeditation, and this interest started bubbling up the more I worked with clients. And I was like, it's just not accessible. Like, how do we make this more accessible? Because it's such a useful tool, but the gap between what we're doing in the clinic with these really expensive technologies, full 19-channel EEG caps, expensive software, it works really well. It's like a Cadillac system, but it's hard to learn and it's not accessible for clients to take home easily without them needing the clinician there. Then I think I was just hanging out on Facebook, and a friend of mine who goes to Burning Man said, hey, there's this guy on the playa who's got a headset, an EEG headset, and it was Alex. And Alex had taken it with him to Burning Man, and I immediately contacted him, and we started talking, and he knew nothing about neurofeedback at that time. If anything, he was doing research. The business was more towards mapping epilepsy and tracking when people are having seizures and informing neurologists. I said, oh man, but this headset would be perfect, because both Jeff and I were talking about like, how can we get these headsets? How can we increase access? And in that time, we also started talking with Sarah Hill in Helium, and she was developing all of this, VR interface stuff, looking at how can we use neurofeedback with VR, but there's still this gap in the technology existed. So when I met Alex, I was like, hey, there's this thing I'd really like to see happen. At that point in time, the company was winding down. They really weren't getting the traction they wanted, so he had to go off on his journey, but we stayed friends, and I continued working with Jeff, and I continued doing my work. And then when the pandemic started, we realized that, hey, maybe now is a time to actually really consider this more deeply. So Alex approached me and said, maybe now is the time we could reboot the company and do something with it. And we did. Here we are. And I pulled Jeff in along the way. Oh, I can't hear you, Holly.
Thank you. That's really great. And I love the Burning Man connection between the two of you. It just has this this is the way things work. Usually there's just these fluid, natural connections that, we make at usually an unexpected place that brings people together. And that's a really great aspect of your story. I want to back up just a little bit for people to kind of take the view, because you jumped right in with what this does with neurofeedback, and I actually want to roll back a little bit for people who may not know about neurofeedback and just give them that grounding. And so maybe I'll toss it over to Jeff to will you lay the foundation, Jeff, for us in terms of what neurofeedback is exactly and how it's used and who it helps?
Sure. It's a nice big question. Neurofeedback, I think broadly speaking, is, really using EEG, so brain waves, and measuring and monitoring them as a way to understand. So first off, to understand what's kind of happening for a particular individual. So we know enough at this point that we can start to connect certain brainwave patterns with certain mental health concerns. So there are ways that we can do that. So from a clinical standpoint, we can kind of look at somebody's brainwave patterns and make a connection to whatever their concerns might be. Then from there, we can take that information and create essentially programs that reward the brain for becoming more flexible. So kind of moving out of those stuck patterns, whatever it might be. So just a real simple example, like if somebody has anxiety and they happen to have a lot of fast brainwave activity, and there's probably a connection there, we might be able to create a program, a protocol that provides them feedback, kind of teaches the brain to reduce that activity. And in so doing, hopefully, the anxiety goes away as well. So neurofeedback, in the short version, is monitoring brainwave activity, connecting that to some sort of feedback. So auditory feedback or visual feedback, something that's letting them know where their brain waves are in real time. So if we're wanting the brain waves to decrease, if there's too much of a certain thing, then as they go down, they get some sort of visual or auditory reward. And it's kind of a way of teaching the brain where we want it to go. And as anybody watching this is fully aware, the brain is very plastic. It's very adaptive. And if you tell it what you want, it will largely do it. And so that's kind of what neurofeedback is. And there's a lot of different ways to engage with it. And kind of as Heather was pointing out, usually it involves things like these loose wires, like these guys. I'm pulling in Alex. This is what Alex does. He starts breaking out equipment. But you stick these wires on your head and connect it to a box, and then you've got the software on your computer that you can design to kind of do what you want. So most of this is done in a clinical context, mostly in mental health. So as a way to treat ADHD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, honestly, just about anything you can imagine from a mental health perspective can be a target for neurofeedback. And again, at least from my perspective, and I think Heather largely agrees with my take on this, is that mostly when you kind of look at somebody who's struggling with some sort of mental health concern, from a brain perspective, it's usually because the brain has become stuck in a pattern that's no longer useful, but it keeps doing it. And so if you can help the brain to become more flexible, then it becomes more adaptive, and you can kind of guide it into a more balanced, way of existing.
That's a great background. And so it's what I, just kind of to build on that. So then it would be fair to say that something like overthinking is just a stuck pattern, right? It's not an inherent condition of being a human being, but it's actually like a learned behavior. Is that right?
Yeah, it's an adaptive response to your environment most often. And some individuals, we're all born with temperaments. So some of us are a little bit quicker and some of us are a little bit slower, just like some of us are taller, some of us are shorter. So the quick-minded people need to know how to duck. Well, slower folks need ladders. But it's when you get fixated there because your environment gets in the way of your ability to rest. And we're calling a lot of this a mental health disorder, but often it's an adaptive response and a learned behavior. And the environment demanded so much repetition that particular pathway got very strong. So we just help clients understand how to expand their repertoire, but still maintain their temperament. So their authenticity comes through a little bit more as the flexibility increases.
Wow. So does that mean that something like ADHD or ADD is more of like a learned behavior than a disease?
But then there are divergencies, which, our company in many ways was inspired by that. Janira, there's a book called Divergent Mind that I really like. That's about, I'm going to mess up her name if I try to say it, but you can Google it. And it's really written for women's mental health, but particularly for like the four main divergences that are identified. So there's highly sensitive, autism, ADHD, and sensory processing. And when someone has a divergence, it means they have an extreme strength in one area. And when the brain is pulling a lot of resources one way, then you usually get like a weakness or less of something in another area. So some individuals with autism, they're like savants, right? They have this capacity for calculating and processing, but maybe in their certain other centers that relate, well, actually they're very usually, some are quite emotional, but they're just very sensitive. And so it's hard to communicate it because it's so overwhelming. Highly sensitive individuals have this depth and capacity for processing, but that comes at kind of the cost of their ability to regulate emotions at times. They're more open, so they can process more deeply, but then they're therefore more empathetic and sensitive and get overwhelmed easily. So it's helping these individuals understand that divergence does not mean that that's a disorder, but you can learn to have a deeper relationship with it. And it also depends on the environment you're in. So some people with the ADHD, for example, out in the woods, they're great. They were the people in the tribe that would be able to identify when intruders were coming, and they knew the health of everyone because they could just see this vastness. But you put them in a classroom, it's not helpful. So sometimes the way your mind works is also based on the context. And so it's kind of opening up the window of how we understand, a disorder versus an adaptive trait.
Yeah. Really appreciate what you're saying, because it feels like it turns on its head this idea of like people can't, like maybe people with ADHD can't focus and they're not like fitting in the box of our Western society. And so we call it a disorder. And what I hear you saying is like, actually they have an adaptive strength. It's just, we're not really, this is a specific society that is, a specific way of learning and a specific, success is defined this way. It's like, they don't fit in that box very well.
Yeah. And then there's a curve of, is it adaptive anywhere, or is it still like so far divergence that then we would say, okay, we need to rein you in a little bit, but still value that adaptive strength.
Yeah. It's a really, appreciate that way, that alternate view of looking at these different traits that people have. So neurofeedback's been around since the 80s, right? And so
before that,
earlier,
before that, okay, yeah, at least before that, and in a clinical setting. So kind of to be transparent, the traditional way people do it is that they go to an office, they work with somebody like one of you, and they do these weekly neurofeedback sessions, and it's expensive. You have to travel, you have to take time. If you have a 9-to-5 job, negotiating all that makes it pretty difficult to access. And what it feels like is what's one of the things that's really happening here is the advent of these headsets like Neurosity, are changing this. They're changing what's possible, right? So it's because now all of a sudden what you're combining is these headsets that somebody can take home, and it's not very expensive, but they can have this mind training, the neurofeedback training. And so we're kind of merging something that's very well proven, but now with headsets that are widely available.
It's the home gym.
Yeah, I love it. So we've got the home gym for neurofeedback that Divergence Neuro is making possible. Is that kind of the basic idea? Okay, great. And so maybe I'll turn it, Alex, to you to just kind of say, okay, we've got Divergence Neuro stepping in as the home gym for neurofeedback. Is this the future of NeuroHealth? Is this how you see it?
Absolutely, Holly. And to your point, it's, I in fact can't think of a better way to describe, the product Divergence and what we do here. Like Heather and Jeff said, I kind of come from an outsider perspective to look at all of this, and I'm humbled, to be honest, how much work and how much ingenuity has already been applied to this field ever since 1920s when EEG was invented. Like Heather mentioned, I had a prior career before founding Divergence, leading an EEG tech company that was focused more on epilepsy, using EEG and as biomarkers to discover epileptic seizure onsets and predicting seizures and that sort of stuff. So I kind of know a little bit about EEG, and when she came to me about neurofeedback, I was just blown away, absolutely blown away by the immense thoughtfulness and power that this kind of seemingly simple paradigm, but actually very, very profound once I dig a little more into it. It's incredible because it's really like working, standing on the shoulder of giants, and you're looking at what this stuff could do, right? Just by looking at, hearing the stories from Heather and Jeff here, understanding how patients really transform their entire lives and behavior, from maladaptive to well-adaptive, and the power of just completely non-drug based sort of intervention and then habituation. This stuff is so powerful. So, as a techie myself, I'm a developer, unlike Heather and Jeff, I'm coming kind of from the opposite side, right? When somebody said just now about, overthinking, I was laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I feel so seen, and looking at the power of the stuff and looking at, where I could apply my skill set and having had personal experience and personal conviction on neurofeedback when Heather first hooked me up in 2018 on her little, traditional device. And she was telling me my life story. I'm like, where did you come from? How did you know this stuff about me? Like my childhood, that's like, we've never spoken before. It's kind of wild. And I said, well, this is so powerful. And now I've experienced it personally. I believe it. How can I help? Right. So she says, well, there's a lot to do, in terms of accessibility. There's a lot to do in terms of making this stuff easy, making this stuff user-friendly, making this stuff affordable and accessible, right? So a typical example, as everyone mentioned earlier, is at-home use. So it's really, really difficult to get quality neurofeedback at home. And there are solutions that are out there that attempted this. I think, the limitations are fairly obvious in terms of the flexibility and the power to, really let clinicians and therapists drive. And that's where our starting point is we really want to be that company that does the work to make better tools and really following the lead of the therapist and really working with them to build better, therapeutic alliance and therapist client relationship. And I strongly believe in Heather's vision that, that relationship is the foundation for everything. And if you ignore that relationship, that foundation is weak. There are solutions that are out there that would attempt to convince people that we can automate everything. I don't necessarily believe that. I think as a tool maker, my job and our job as a team is to make better tools for people. And if we hang on to that, we really have a solid grounding. And I would say that that's the number one mission of the entire Divergence team is really making better tools. For people who are running in the forefront, like Heather and Jeff, in this field, right? And so I hope I kind of got to the point with my meandering. Yeah.
I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think this will resonate a lot with the audience of people that might be watching this, like making better tools for people, because so many people, like of the Heart Mind Alchemy Lab community, are familiar with. They're doing their own type of neurofeedback with Muse, for example, or Flow Time, or these, consumer products that aren't very expensive, that are allowing people to do at-home brain training. That's essentially what these are. And so they're starting to see, wow, I actually can take charge of my own brain health using these tools without medicine. I can actually start to drive the bus on how my own brain looks. And, I don't have to just deal with insomnia with pills or something else. I can actually treat it at the root, which is, stress and anxiety and busy mind. And things like these cheaper headsets, they have a really great place. They've gotten a whole bunch of people. Yeah, they've gotten a whole bunch of people into brain health and what it means to track EEG. And there's this next gen, place that it feels to me like Divergence Neuro is positioning itself to be. And for those who don't know, a lot of the consumer grade headsets just have a couple of sensors, at the front, maybe at the back. And these new products that are coming out on the market, you held up the Neurosity. So maybe, Alex, you want to just tell us a little bit about that one and how it compares and what it can do.
Yeah, certainly, Holly, and I'd be happy to. So we really started working with Neurosity early last year, and like us, they're a very innovative, very progressive company that doesn't settle for the status quo. As you aptly mentioned, there has been a lot of products out there. Muse is one of them that came earlier than Neurosity, certainly. And I think, there has been products created around that, but universally, from what we're hearing from the therapist community that has been using these products, there has been, certain limitations on number of channels and sites or things like that. We found that, with the Neurosity device, the first thing that we felt was it's a very sturdy, very well-designed device that will withstand, sort of different kind of conditions or human conditions, as I call it, when you use it. It's very sturdy. And the second thing is it has 8 channels that it covers sort of posterior and anterior kind of areas of your head, and you can do a lot with that. And the next gen device, which is just coming out now, called the Crown, has occipital, parietal occipital coverage as well. So there's a lot of flexibility, right? So, and these guys, they're a very, very kind of fast-moving startup. They innovate all the time. They don't settle for status quo. They care a lot about their customers, in the way that they've worked with us to really help us address these key usability points. And I think philosophically, there's a lot of devices we can buy, but there aren't a lot of companies we see ourselves being so aligned with in terms of, really emphasizing the user experience, really emphasizing, how does my product make my users feel, right? It's important because this is a human business at the end of the day. If we don't feel comfortable with the device, or if we don't feel great about using it or the user experience, it's just not going to work. So we really like working with Neurosity among a lot of the device vendors out there because of those reasons. And I think, as we co-evolve these products, be it with the hardware, look at that, that's great, with the hardware and the software together, right? It ultimately is one experience that we're delivering to our users, regardless of hardware or software. I'm happy to say that we're super aligned, with the Neurosity team in terms of that view, and I think that we're just getting started, really, and there's no end to what we can do with this platform. That being said, though, we are an open, sort of platform. We do work with other, hardware devices and vendors as well, and there's a lot of devices coming out, and everybody has their strengths and their merits, and in a way that there's devices specifically tailored to kind of a certain application or a set of applications, right? So we're not, we're the kitchen, and devices are utensils. We're just creating space for therapists who are the chefs and the masterminds coming in and execute a brilliant vision. And so, like I said, all we do is we give them space and we give them tools to play with.
Awesome. So I want to, that's fantastic. And I want to direct a question over to Jeff to ask you. So, I mean, Divergence Neuro is certainly, more channels with these new devices. You're able to work with all kinds of conditions in this kind of, in a more traditional neurofeedback way, and address that, but with much more robust. So I'd love for you to just address that, the kinds of things that you see people being able to do. But I also really want you to address, especially for our Heart Mind Alchemy Lab community, kind of these tools from the meditators kind of point of view. And maybe if you want to take that one first, that would be great. Somebody who wants to, is using meditation and wants to know if these products can be used to deepen meditation and to address conditions that they're doing meditation for, busy mind, whatever.
Yeah, totally. And, and largely that's kind of my role here, or at least part of my role, because obviously Heather does a lot of that as well, right? But honestly, most of my practice, I do almost zero traditional neurofeedback anymore. It's mostly neuromeditation and using neuromeditation to assist people in whatever it is they're trying to do. And, I think most folks that are kind of watching this are probably at least familiar with our general kind of idea that, different styles of meditation do different things in the brain. They affect different areas of the brain, and they engage certain areas, and they inhibit other areas. And so, in order to effectively engage neurofeedback with a variety of meditation practices, you kind of have to have access to all of these different areas of the brain that are involved. And so this is one of the things where I agree with you that I think, some of the simpler, forehead devices and things like that, they certainly have a place. And they have their limitations, which I think pretty much everybody understands. And so for me, this is what makes it really exciting with something like the Neurosity or some of the other headsets coming out, is because we can actually get to, the hub of the default mode network, which again, anybody that meditates and pays attention to this stuff, that's the thing, right? Like that's the thing you have to get access to if you really want to have, even all the research. There's probably 5 or 6 research articles out there that very directly look at combining neurofeedback with meditation, and every single one of them are looking at the default mode network and the posterior cingulate. And so we have to get access to that. That's kind of a key area. And so again, pretty excited about some of these headsets because we can do that. But then you can also get access to other things like the insula. Of course, we can't get right into the insula because it's a deeper brain structure, but we can get close enough on the surface that that activity shows up. And again, this is really important for certain kinds of meditative states, that embodied state, and certain emotional states and empathy, being able to access that all tie into the insula. And if you can't measure that, how do you know that that's what you're getting exactly? So the more sensors and the more flexibility we have in terms of specific brain waves, we can get much more precise. And so for me, that's where I get really excited because, being able to use something like this platform where I can send out these headsets and these protocols to the people that I'm working with and, check in. I mean, we haven't even kind of talked about what the platform is really, right? But it's like, the ability for me to send you, Holly, wherever you happen to be hanging out at, if you're in Wyoming or whatever, right? Like to send you a protocol and you can stick the thing on your head and run it. And then I can look on my computer and see exactly what you just did, make adjustments. Heather's got the app on her phone. I lost Holly for a second. There she is. But to be able to see as your kind of coach, to be able to see exactly what you're doing in the moment, make little adjustments to your protocol so that it's more individualized for you and to what you're doing in your process. And for that to show up to you instantaneously, like that's magic, right? At least from where I'm sitting. Like, so this is why I'm excited, is because this is what I've wanted for, forever. And so, thank God for Heather and Alex. Otherwise I'd still be over here banging my head against a wall. I still do that anyway sometimes, but more. So I don't know if I answered
me. Sorry, you were calling me like every month. Do you know of any good? Is there any good portable headsets? Is there one that we can be using?
Heather was sending me stuff every week. Of course, any of you that know Heather, she sends you stuff every week anyway, right? Like it's like lots of information. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, Holly, but obviously, that's what gets me excited, right? Clearly, since I'm squirming out of my seat over here. But
We can't hear you, but you're not muted.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. The
Great.
tagline of 20
Audio, visual,
pandemic.
Shoot. Jeff, that's really what gets me excited too. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, I feel like from the realm of coaches who are working with people and clinicians and therapists who are working with people on meditation, busy brain, sleep issue. I mean, there's so many things or more serious issues. This ability, just like you described, this ability to see what they're doing and make small adjustments and sort of feed it back to them in a new program is an absolute upgrade from where we currently are with a more limited headsets and much more limited kind of remote neurofeedback options. So it gets me super excited as well. Let's see.
And no gel and paste.
And yeah. And so this, just to be clear, so the vision of this, maybe Heather, you want to take this one, is for this to be device, for it to work with a number of different devices. You have, and as they come out, you could add more, right?
Exactly. And the idea is too that, we're hoping that in time you could have like a rental place where you could, work with these different headsets. Clients can use them. It depends on what I'm cooking in the kitchen. I'd send the right utensils to my client and then they'd be able to swap them out over time. We'll figure out how it goes. But the idea is that we are device agnostic and we're just building a playground for self-awareness and, for neuro meditation and a place you can come and learn. And also we're, invite individuals over time as they develop their own protocols, their own recipes. It's like a different kitchen that you go to, and there's apps that people can purchase over time. So if you're not a neurofeedback therapist or a clinician is like, I know that prescribing this to you actually does the thing I want to do, there might be some standardized stuff. But the main piece is that we're shifting the way we're using technology, that you don't just sit there by yourself all the time. It's a relationship. So I really like the neuro meditations. And when I started working with them, it really expanded the way I was using neurofeedback. So traditional neurofeedback is done more passive. Sometimes you're playing games and you are engaging them and learning different things. But to be able to add the neuro meditations where someone's really getting a sense of the state in a prolonged way and how that state stitches together something that they're learning in a traditional practice so that they're able to continually train and choose, which pathway in the brain, which muscle are you flexing? And to really distinguish that is really important because that flex that you make strengthens a certain pathway. But how else do you know, if you're doing it right, unless the coach or trainer is there saying, just turn your hand a little bit this way. Well, that's what we get with neurofeedback. We can actually be a little more precise on how you're using your attention and then validate for that person that, this is the way it feels. And I usually frame it as emotional cardio. It's not comfortable always to learn a new way of being. If you're used to having a busy mind, quieting your mind can feel threatening. It can feel dangerous. It can feel uncomfortable. And if you don't have a coach or feedback saying, that discomfort is actually helping you grow, just like you go to the gym, the right amount of soreness means you're going to get muscles. So there is something to pairing them together and keeping it in relationship that encourages people to continue trying.
Heather, this may be a little bit of an out-of-box question, but I think you can. I'd love to ask.
Out of the box.
Because I know you're a fan of Shinzen Young and his work in the awakened mind state, and there again, kind of this sort of audience of Heart Mind Alchemy Lab. There's a lot of people who are really interested in these awakened mind states and non-dual awareness, and I'm curious if you feel like there will be protocols that you will be able to offer on that more of awakened mind state using device, using Virgin.
Yeah, Jeff and I, it's funny because we probably a year ago we're talking about this again, and I met Shinzen at the Awakened Futures conference and got a chance to speak with him. And as I was listening to what he was talking about, I was like, we called that the apathy protocol. I didn't even realize that might have been some high kind of meditative state. That time I turned off all my emotions and like literally had no thoughts or feelings or anything. And it wasn't apathy, because apathy would mean that there was a sense to it, but it was just, there's no word to describe it. Like it was ineffable. And it had no emotional content to it, yet I was able to function. And I spent a whole day like this. We were tinkering around with a neurofeedback protocol and clearly took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. So that's the other piece why it's important, or maybe I guess it was the right turn, I just didn't realize it. Why the relational piece is important. Going to a gym without a clinic, like a trainer, the first time you might injure yourself. You can train yourself the wrong way with neurofeedback. I've sent myself into anxiety, and I've also sent myself into shutdown, but this was novel. It was empty. I must explain it. And I went home and I pretty much just sat there still. And I think I even went to bed because there wasn't much motivation in me to do anything. And I felt I just felt spacious, I guess is the best term for it, because there wasn't a feeling. And then when the feeling started to arise again, I remember having this vision of like this crystal, like this beautiful lake with just like the sparkles starting on it, like just the touch of light, of emotion started coming back in. And it was so rich. It's like I hadn't had food in so long that first taste just was so beautiful. And it filled me with a sense of gratitude and creativity and clarity. And I ended up writing this really nice proposal, but we never did it again because we were like, whoa, that was really weird. But then in further conversations with Shinzen, I was like, I think we figured this out with neurofeedback. So Jeff and I had been talking about it, and I think we're ready now that, building divergence kind of showed up. So now that's built, I think we can get back to considering how do we bring this about in individuals and how do we support them in getting there, while also still helping folks understand that this transition and moving into these states is still emotional cardio, and you make space for processing, and it's important to consider. I don't know, Jeff, what do you think about moving into that space?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's do it. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of directions that all of that this could go, right? And including, some of the work that, Heather had, pioneered as well, right? Like in terms of mimicking brainwave patterns that you see in psychedelic states, right? There's a lot that can be done in this space that I think could be really powerful. For me, one of the things I think that is, and this may be just a personal thing, but for me, I think it's important to consider using neurofeedback in this way as a tool, to like training wheels to help you learn to navigate your own internal states and to develop the capacity for some of this state existence and awareness. And to me, that's a little different than some of the technologies where it's kind of pushing your brain into a certain state. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that for me, I want to be able to learn to navigate it myself and to use this as a tool to help me find that path, right? It's like, well, here's where you need to go, but I got to figure out how to go there, right? Like, and so I think that's the beauty of neurofeedback, right? Is that it can really serve as those training wheels so that, you're learning to develop your own state. And this is where I think it's different than, everybody gets excited about gamma, for example, right? It's like, oh my God, monks have so much gamma. And, just because you blast your brain with gamma doesn't make you a monk, right? It's like, you still have to learn how to meditate. You still have
Emergent property. Gamma is an emergent property. Yes, it helps to have gamma, but if it's emerging, you're in that state.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, and again, this is where I think like the technology of neurofeedback is slightly different than some other technologies. And again, I'm not saying the other ones are bad. It's just different in terms of thinking of the approach.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think my own, I totally agree with what you're saying, Jeff, in my own experience, because it feels like what neurofeedback does is it teaches you what those things feel like so you can replicate them on your own. Like you start to do it naturally, so you're learning, right?
Yeah. I've been, had the headset and we've put Quiet Mind on it as like kind of the baseline. And it's been really interesting and fun to put it on people's heads and let them try. And I just love how everyone's like, it's like this expansive, like you can just see. And when they try to describe it, people go, I'm like, yeah, out of your head into your body, which has an expansive feel. Your awareness expands into the space around you. You're not just inside. And I was really impressed. I've played with the Muse, and this was particularly notable. You know, it's very responsive and it's very sensitive. So it's exciting that it's that easy, because I've used it with clients, you know, after they've been seeing me for a while, putting this like full 19 channel, you know, headset on them, and then I do this and they're getting a similar response. How amazing. It's exciting.
Wow. Yeah, that is super exciting. I have clients right now I would love to start using it with.
Well, I can attest with my personal example. So I've always been what Heather calls a beta head, and I've got a super hot singlet. So coming from the setting where thinking is pretty much the only mode, and there's no being without thinking, right? I went through STAM and everything else, and and even like up till 2 weeks ago when we were going through the whole launch, getting ready for ISNR, I was so stressed out. And so just overthought everything, and then what if this happened and that happened? How like running a startup just catches up with you. And I was so burned out without even realize it. And Heather's like, hey, why don't you try Quiet Mind? Just put it on for like 20 minutes. Just I swear, you're gonna feel it because like
Check it out.
it's the ironic part, right? It's sort of like I'm so busy crafting the tools, right, on the division of these two guys. And I get stressed out. I'm like, shit, I'm building my own tools. I should really kind of try this. And the minute I put it on, it's exactly what Heather said. It's like, it just, it just induces this sort of somatic connection and that embodiment, like the training wheels. Cause I don't know how to meditate. Like when I close my eyes, I have more thoughts coming to me. So I'm one of those people. And with this stuff, it's like the experience, the sound, the feeling, the kind of guided sort of gradual, gentle ramp up. It just takes me there, and I couldn't even explain it. It worked so well that I'm making it sort of a steady practice for myself to try to do this daily, and it's incredible. To Jeff's point, some of these things serve so well for people like me who don't know anything about meditation or embodiment, for that matter. To kind of just gradually ramp up, and I'm like here, right? So it's incredible. If you told me to close my eyes and feel my body, I wouldn't get there. I just wouldn't. So it is incredible, especially for people who are just starting out. And the cool part is I don't have to physically be in Jeff or Heather's clinic and have wire these crazy gel cap things on my head, and I can just do this for 20 minutes a day every day in the comfort of my home, and that's what creates the sort of habituation, right? And small gradual increment. So I'm a convert.
Hey, can I jump in for a second and actually can I take over your interview, Holly?
Of course.
Please.
Actually, Alex, I'm wondering if you would say a few words too. One of the things that I'm also excited about with the platform is the assessment capability. And we haven't really talked about that. And, I think whether you're a coach or a therapist or whatever, if you're using this with other people, I think that's an important aspect. Would you mind saying something?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. So, aside from the actual practice itself, right, we've also created this capability of therapists driving, a custom assessment. So an assessment is essentially a list of questions that the therapist could craft. So, anything from felt sense to a degree of, connectedness or rating of effectiveness, or anything that, the practitioner will subjectively rate their experience with. So for instance, Jeff can create, 3 questions. Hey, how embodied did you feel? And, how quiet was your mind before and after? And did you notice, any kind of sense of feeling well-being change, or from a level of 1 to 5, what would you rate your well-being? So he can push that to me on his therapist dashboard in a web app. And I'll see that in my mobile app when I pick up a phone. And as soon as I'm done a practice, I can answer those questions in order that Jeff wants me to. So as soon as I do that, the data that I provide in terms of my assessment response will go along with my, meditation session result. So it creates this 360 view of, how I respond and my subjective feelings or felt sense, along with the relatively objective data that is sort of my threshold, and where am I in terms of my alpha, beta, gamma. So it really just kind of rounds out the picture, and we felt that it was really cool that we were able to get that all into one seamless kind of experience for our users to have.
That's really valuable. It is there really valuable to have that assessment piece for sure. As a coach, who, working with clients in this way, it's very helpful to have that baseline and ongoing assessment. Are you able or does it exist now to do also a type of QEEG assessment using software?
Yeah, so we're gradually improving the platform to include more features. So right now we can upload the EEG pieces, QEEG pieces, and in the future we're incorporating more and analytics based on QEEG phenotyping and different kinds of like connectivity analysis tools. But what I can tell you now is the more data we collect, the better some of these prediction tools will get in terms of categorizing deviations or differentiations from baseline and in characteristics that are group or relatable. So for instance, if you're feeling a certain way that's represented by your subjective assessment results, and you see a lot of people feeling that way after a particular biomarker in the EEG that we capture, the system is actually smart enough to build that correlation and it would inform the therapist in a way that these two things are correlated. And the more you see that, the more, it helps humans extrapolate patterns that are otherwise, subtle and harder to see, right? So that's really where the power of the platform comes from. Like I said, we're just getting started with this. The more, QEEG bits we collect, the more sessions we provide, the more assessment comes back, the stronger our platform will grow in terms of capability to help therapists and ultimately patients to discover their own patterns. So I think of it as sort of a feedback cycle. Macroscopically, if you think about it, the users provide the data, and then that comes in the form of model, comes back to benefit the user at the end, and it's a cohesive ecosystem, right?
Great. So lots of room to grow that you guys are going to be building these features in, and certainly it sounds like that's all in your sort of on the horizon, things you're certainly thinking about and building in as fast as you can, probably. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah, it's on our roadmap.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, so as I look at all of this, it has always felt to me like Muse and Mendy and now these new headsets, they're like democratizing mental health. They're democratizing our ability to really treat in the home, in a really new way, from the way that it's currently done. Is that how you see it, Heather?
Yeah, I feel we're offering, mental health is the one place where we're using, clinician insight, which is valuable. We're using assessments, which are valuable, but we have biometrics. We have EEG, and it has a long enough history, and there's enough research validating that there are specific patterns tied to different mental health concerns. So adding that objective measure just helps ground the clinician and the client in some objective data. And my experience of using a qualitative EEG with clients is they're usually really relieved. Oh, it's like finding out your B12 is low and that's why your memory isn't going so great, right? You feel like something's wrong with you and it's inside of you, so nobody can really understand it. But then your doctors like take some blood work, or they do an EKG, or they check your lungs, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, my arm hurts, it's broken, I took an X-ray. And we do MRIs and functional MRIs, and those show pieces, but this is just something you could have at home. And it's kind of, in many ways, we hope a Fitbit for your brain. Let's, check your brain each day, and you can start tracking over time how it's going, even if you're not training. And there's a lot of research, especially, from pioneers like Jay Gunkelman, and in the field where we see that prescribing medications based on EEG, you have better adherence. Certain classes of medication are tied to specific brain patterns, and if a doctor could just put this on their head and take a nice quick snapshot, it's less guessing, right? We take the guesswork out, we take some of the struggling that clients have to go through for 6 weeks. So I'm just really hoping that this adds a new layer to the current models that we already have, and it just helps stitch them together so we can be a little more precise.
Yeah. Oh, it's so wonderful. I'm really, yeah, I'm just so appreciative to you for kind of having the idea, bringing it forward, actually actualizing it, making it happen, bringing together the fantastic team that you have. And it's really, really exciting to see. So thank you all. And I guess, I'm curious kind of any other thoughts or sort of parting last questions, Alex or Jeff, that you guys want to put in here as a place to go with this, what you're excited about, or anything I didn't ask you.
Well, I'll just say this, what an incredible opportunity this has been, and I'm really honored and thankful to be here and get to do a little spiel of our little venture. And it's been a long time coming. I'm just grateful to be on this journey with such incredible minds and visionaries like these two here. And I'm super happy, to learn more in this community and really kind of, as I go on my own journey of embodiment and really kind of meditation driven sort of a change in my own mindset as I'm building the tool, what an incredible time to do this, as everything kind of just catalyzes around us, more chaos. I think there's never been a time like today where this is super important for all of us to understand. So I'm super appreciative to be part of this journey and being among such greats. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Alex. So if people watching this wanted to sort of see a demo or something, like what would be the process for them to be able to, actually see the thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We're super happy to do demos. We're actually working on a recorded demo as we speak, but anybody is welcome to drop us a line. So we have a contact form on our website, which is www.divergenceneuro.com. Alternatively, you guys can reach out to any of us on Facebook, or we have a Facebook page as well. So if you go on Facebook, search Divergence Neuro, you should be able to message us directly from there as well. So yeah, we're happy to demo the platform to anyone that has a vested interest in it. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And I guess I'm just gonna say with my parting thoughts on this is somebody who changed my brain from a very busy mind, from the sort of typical recurring thoughts, and lived most of my life that way and thought that was normal and thought that was the way it had to be. And through meditation, through neurofeedback tools that like the Muse, was able to completely change my brain. And I read Les Fermi's book Open Focus Brain, and just realized that, I just love, that realization that this chronic kind of busy mind that we're in, this focused attention, thinking that that's like normal, because I always thought that was just the way it was, as a student. I'm a straight A student, I'm really good at focusing and just doing everything in a sort of task-oriented, focused way. And it's great. You get a lot of things done if you're that kind of person. So you're a very good soldier for Western society. But I actually don't think that that's a very happy way to live life. And if you, and what if, where basically through the work, the meditation, and the amazing meditation teachers that I encountered that taught me to expand my focus, to soften and learn to, calm those beta brainwaves and be in a restful, actually learn to rest in open awareness. And lo and behold, just like you're saying, Jeff, it shuts off the default mode network. You do that over time enough, and all that kind of recycled thinking just kind of poof, it doesn't come up. It just doesn't come up. I mean, it's like, it really did change my brain. And I'm such a champion and advocate for this and work with people because it worked so well for me. I'm just so appreciative because, at the base of that is just a happier being. I mean, it's just, I'm fundamentally so much happier. And so I guess that I just want to part by saying I'm such a big believer in both meditation and neurofeedback assisted meditation, because for me, it was my kind of gateway drug in, where I kind of was at that point where meditation, I just could never quite, grok it, figure it out. And so I thought I wasn't very good at it. And lo and behold, through the, technology, I just needed some help understanding what I was doing. And wow, it works. It really works. And so, like, change your brain, change your life. And this tool feels like it's absolutely the next generation of that. And especially for people who have like real conditions, like that are really a struggle, like ADHD, ADD, insomnia, autism, depression. These things can be helped with neurofeedback and good clinicians. So, just as a vote of confidence for those watching who are inspired to try. So thank you all for the work that you're doing. I think it's amazing. I'm really excited about this product, and thanks for your time, for being here, each of you.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Holly.
having us.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll put links to the products and Neuro Meditation Institute in the comments. And yeah, see you soon. See you next week. All right.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.